Hello and good evening and welcome to Triple Tap interview number 29. Wow, haven't we come a long way? In 29 weeks, we've interviewed so many exciting people and tonight is no exception. We're just getting our guests sorted at the moment. But in the meantime, as always, I'd like to welcome Kent and Lance to the call this evening. How are you both? We'll start with you, Kent. Got the thumbs up from Lance. Lance is sneezing a lot. He's got hay fever, so we'll hopefully get a chance to chat to him. But Kent, how are you this week and what type of a week have you had?
Fantastic week. I can't wait till Lance does one of his hoot owl sneezes. It's going to be awesome. I've been going through the amendment to the Health Act in Queensland legislation, and I've taken it took a couple of days for me to read it and analyse it. I'm going to start doing segments on that so that people who are inside Queensland can begin to understand it. It is really, truly some of the worst, most hideous legislation ever written. Anastasia Palaszczuk is attempting to pass off powers to the CEO of the local government councils. Now, that is an unelected bureaucrat who she's going to give the authority to decide whether or not we have a health emergency. And then the CEO can appoint, using state-funded taxpayers' money, can appoint these authorised persons who will have the right to enter your house and take any action they deem necessary without a warrant. The way it is written, these authorised people, it literally means they can do whatever they want. If they receive some crazy idea from the World Health Organization, and we've just seen what Fauci has admitted now under cross-examination during his deposition today, Fauci admitted that the idea of lockdowns came from the Chinese government and was a well-supported initiative of the World Health Organization. It was the information given to him by one person who took a junket trip to China, didn't even visit Wuhan, came back and said, look, I reckon we should put lockdowns in. Now Fauci's admitted that the lockdowns, yep, we used them to force people to get vaccinated. So Anastasia wants to pass powers like this onto a council chief executive officer, someone who's had no training in anything except how to suck up to get a really good job in a council. Like, seriously, this is not I've been talking with past and present Queensland police officers about this. Even the Queensland police officers had no idea when they've been reading it. These are currently serving officers and past officers. When they had no idea that that's what this was. And when they read it, they're like, this is super dangerous. But anyway, so that's what I've been doing. I've done that at the request of Teen, who is a TAP member from Mackay. So g'day, Teen. Thank you for the extra workload. And anyway, I'll talk more about that later because there's a few loopholes that Anastasia has put in place, and I think we're really going to smack her with her own legislation.
Yeah, excellent. What about you, Lance? How's your week been? I know we're just about ready to introduce our special guest for this evening. So how's your week been? And maybe, because I don't have a bio for our special guest this evening, maybe you'd like to introduce our special guest for us and we will get him in.
Yeah, okay. So I'll introduce Jagamara. He's all of our brother from another mother, a super cool individual, total troublemaker, loves bucking the system. So he's a perfect fit in our family. Look, there he is.
There he is. Well, aren't you just colourful there, Jagamara? I love it.
Just a little bit, hey?
Yeah.
I don't like just being black and white. Had to bring the colour into it.
Oh, beautiful. Welcome, welcome.
So, unlike Kent, I haven't been reading legislation, especially Queensland legislation. I couldn't think of anything worse. Probably be torture. Probably more enjoyable than reading the rubbish that comes out of Queensland Parliament. Guys, you got to get your head around the fact that the governments are just corporations like McDonald's. We stop entering service contracts with them, they cease to exist. These are facts. I saw a lot of Victorians cranky that Dan got re-elected. Well, wake up. Big surprise. I could have told you this 10 years ago. It's rigged, guys. If you want to live in a decent system, we create our own, we move into it. And that's what we're doing. And they're the initiatives that we're bringing to the table. We're not waiting till we're in power, because here's the deal. Politicians are never in power, right? We're not waiting till we're in government in the corrupt system. Anyone telling you that is a loser. Don't follow them. Come over to the light side and the dark side.
And the bright side.
Where we come together as one nation. The true light side, the true dark side, and the true meaning of living together in true harmony under law. And that's LAW and LORE. And I can tell you that those two things are the same. So without further ado, welcome, Jagamara.
Hey, that's my line.
Thank you, and thank you to all three of you guys. A long time no see.
Yes.
And how are you all?
Oh, really well.
Jack,
Thank you.
Jack, I was commenting to Ainsley before you guys got on in our little pre-meeting before we start, that I'm always amazed at how busted my head looks on this video. And then you jump on here, and mate, I've got to say, you're looking pretty sharp, brother.
Well, thank you, man. I've been intermittently I'm doing the intermittent fasting now. Then got here and I decided to have a beer with Lance. Break that intermittent fast.
I'm glad we got you on before you have too many beers with Lance.
Oh, me too. Trust me. So do we. So does everyone here, I would say.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's been a long time since we spoke, Jagamara. So we're really looking forward to speaking with you this evening and learning more about the sovereign nations and how important they are, and what it's going to do moving forward.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because me and Lance were just speaking about this before we actually come on to the meeting. I'm not sure how many people are aware that we're actually over the line. Githabo Narakul has put their documents in because under international law, the only reason this corporation can govern over us is until the tribes have their own governance put together, meaning their own government, so they can govern themselves. And government simply means to govern the mind. And so rather than allow these corporates to try and govern us, to get us to believe that we are insignificant and that we are simply a single cog in the Ferris wheel that they create, which is their narrative, to understand that only exists if you believe their narrative and you step into their narrative. These Kent and Lance have been, I'm going to have to say, instrumental in everything we've done with the tribes up to this point in time. There's no way I could have done it without them. That's a fact. That is a fact. Yeah. It may have taken a long, long time to get where we are now. But because of their hearts and also their minds, we're here, and we've been now over the line now since the 1st of this month. So I believe that is 20, 22, 23 days, is it not? What's the date today?
It's the 29th. So 28 days ago, you became a nation.
28 days ago, we got over the line. So Githabo Narakul is now a recognized government. The Royal House is in order. The Williams Royal House is in place. It now stands. It's equal to the Royal House of Windsor. Our government is not equal to this government. This is a real government, not a corporation masquerading as government, but we have a real government. It's the second real government in Australia for the last 252 years. The Yidinji, who I'm sure Ken and Lance have spoken about, many groups have sat with them and found it really hard to comprehend. But we took their same information, and we not only did we take their information, we duplicated it, and we made it a lot easier to be able to see, easier to present, and easier to comprehend. We've got altogether 24 ministers already, 24 ministries, and some of us, all three of us here, have more than one ministry to run at this moment because of our lack of people. But just so people are aware of how significant and why it is important, because under God, what some people would call God's law, because there's all these metaphors and parables and all good books, all holy books, they all talk about the same thing, and they all talk about the laws of man and woman and the laws of corporations, corporations, dead entities. And you can go all the way back to canons, the law of canons, which is from the Vatican. It clearly states, let the dead deal with the dead, let the living deal with the living. And what that actually means when you break it down, when you take the parable, because the parable is just trying to give you people messages within messages. We, the living, breathing men and women, have a law which is called the law of common sense, because the law of common sense is an unwritten law, because it deals with day-to-day situations and circumstances, and it puts it in the hands of those who are members of the community where the harm, loss, or damage has been created. Now, if anyone knows much about common law is the law of common sense, the unwritten law. Yeah. Now, in these laws, what it basically means is that a living law, there must be an injured party. So if we're talking man or woman who are bringing another party to a court to deal with a dispute because they can't settle it themselves, then there must be an injured party. And then that injured party would be the one who's trying to settle the dispute or to find some just compensation, whatever it may be, for whatever the harm, loss, or damage has gone down. Now, there's a maxim inside the common law, which is the juris corpus, and bring me the body, which means if you're going to bring a complaint, because all these charges that they bring, they are simply bringing a complaint. Someone is bringing a complaint to the court. And then, if you they say, bring in your case. Well, it's another metaphor. Think of the case like your briefcase. Whatever you put in your briefcase is your briefcase. And it's the same as the lawyers that come in. They are bringing their case in. You can't change anything in their briefcase, and they'll pack whatever they like, whenever they like, however they like. You have to bring your own case. Now, both of you are talking about the same thing. You're just showing that their challenge is correct because you're both talking about it. Does that make sense? And this is the main trick that they get. But if you bring your own case, which is who you are, what you do, is example there. The first thing they trick you is guilty or not guilty. Well, doesn't the law say innocent until proven guilty? So I simply say innocent. So but how do you plead? Innocent or guilty or not guilty? I don't make a plea. I say you made a mistake. I am innocent. Full stop. Yeah. Now, customary law is very similar. The dead law can only deal with corporations. It's a corpus juris, or juris corpus, is a corporation law which is there to settle disputes between agreements that companies and corporations corporations may make with each other. Now, there's what we call domestic law and there's international law. Domestic law is the individual laws within that particular continent or that particular town, whatever it may be. International law is the law that all of these continents must abide by to be able to do trade and commerce. And that's all most international law is about. It's about trade and commerce. All treaties are about trade, which is for commerce. So when people start saying treaties to bring groups together, no, they're not. All treaties are put together for trade. And the
Jagamara, if I can support something that you just said there,
yes.
that treaties are put together for trade. Prime Minister Curtin back, I'm going to say he was back in the early 50s or late 40s, made a statement to the Australian people that this land was settled by people from Britain for the express purpose of creating a trading post in this part of the world for the British royal family.
correct.
And that's the whole reason. That's the whole reason it was created. And talking about and look, understanding that that's the reason that Australia, the so-called Australia that we know was created, and your country was stolen from you.
Well, it wasn't actually. They never took it anywhere. It was
they belligerently occupied it, yeah, which they're still doing. Okay, which they're still doing. And going on to what you were talking about before about there has to be an injured party in law. When people in Australia break what's called codified law, it's interesting, in every part of Australia, the charge that they charge you with in court is that you've committed the offence against Regina, and that is the reigning queen. Now, that word will change for the reigning king. It will be the masculine of Regina. To be fair, I don't know what that is. I'm going to look that up.
Well, that's a trick, man. That's another trick, man.
It's another trick, because then they're not our queen or king. They've got nothing to do with this.
I'll tell you how they catch you, all right? Because there's two of everything.
Yeah.
In order for anything to exist, there must be an opposite. You got light. Without dark, you wouldn't know light.
Duality.
Yeah. So without the opposite, the first can't exist without the opposite.
Yep.
You got male, female, hot, cold, fire, water. Everything needs to have an opposite. Yeah. So you are if you look at Black's Law Dictionary or Bouvier's dictionary, which is a legal dictionary that is used when you start going into these big courts for the International Court of Justice or the United Nations. Yeah. You are not a man, you are not a woman. Let's get that correct. In that dictionary, it says you are a living, breathing soul traveling through the sea of space inside the physical vessel that you have embodied. So it's saying in the legal dictionary that you are not the flesh. And it has to say that in order so that the law doesn't make the Bible look like a lie. Because all their law comes from ecclesiastical law, which is the law of religious practices.
Yeah.
So the first law is from the Vatican, known as canons. Yeah. Now, well, this is saying that you're a living, breathing soul traveling through the sea of space in the physical vessel that you have embodied. They're saying that you are consciousness. You are the cosmic traveler. You are the one who jumps into the sacred waterhole in the sky. Some people call it heaven. Fly down through the light, which is of the sun, and enter the womb through the light, through the eyes. Because I'm not sure how many people know, when a woman is impregnated, the soul enters the body through sunlight, just so you're aware. What is the sunlight and what feeds the spirit? The spirit is consciousness. It is fed by photons, protons, electrons, and neutrons, which is sunlight. So you are made of light. You are a light being. But there's two parts of us. If you look at the Bible, the Quran, and all of these holy books, they all say exactly the same thing, they just say it differently. But to truly understand how can this thing make sense, the body is the temple of God. Well, it all kind of goes right the way back to Sumeria. The most ancient texts were not written. They're actually in clay. And it's Inky, a little, and his sister. And they were geneticists. And so Inky he's like the king, the star king. And when you read the Quran, because these same stories are written in the Quran as well, but it's more in depth. It actually talks about these people were on Mars, and then they came to they could see the Earth from Mars, and the blue sea looked gold and blue because the amount of gold which was in the water, and it says that in the Quran. And then they left. They got into their airships and they traveled to this place, which we know now here. And they tried many ways to. They brought with them another group of beings, which were their slaves, and they wanted them to be the miners to dig the gold and the minerals out of the ground. But these beings they brought with them were not suited for the environment of the earth that was here way back in the day. So they tried to create. So then the second brother, who was the captain of the ship, so he was military. He said to his sister, who was the geneticist, okay, we're to create another form of slave that can be able to live within this world and in this earthly plane and be able to survive this world and the hostile environment, and at the same time be able to do the work. And we're supposed to be given the same thinking as bees and ants, so that we didn't think, we never questioned, we just told to do something, we just followed our instructions. That's how we were supposed to be created. But then they tried, and even in the Bible said a female from the earth. Well, we call him Dulagar Mamagal. Dulagar is a big hairy fella. We did not come from apes or primates. We came from a primordial being we call Dulagar, which is the big hairy fellas. Male is called Dulagar, up to 19 foot, and the female we call Mamagal. And so they were the earthly creatures that they got, and they got 7 of these earthly females. And the sister said they must be feminine. So they got 7 of these earthly females, and then they got 7 of their own DNA, because every time they try to splice put their own DNA into these feminine creatures of the earth, it will reject the fetus. And so the sister said, no. In order to do this, we must do this in a laboratory. It's not going to work. And she was now here's the sucker. These are the things that people don't actually understand. But when you actually look at the text, this blows your mind away, because they've only known now about genealogy and about the gene pool, how to actually splice DNA from one species and splice it and put it into another species. They did, the first one was a sheep they did here in Australia. Yeah. Well, that's actually written on these clay tablets, which is 6,000 years ago. So this is the part where people start going, holy gosh, if you know much about genetics, because I work with genetics. And the people, my best friend is a geneticist. So that's what we work with, is genetics. And then you look at monkeys and all of these other primates, none of them can give birth in water. Now, the law of genetics, if I take a genetic trait from any species and I bring them two together to create my own, then the species I take these traits are going to keep whatever trait they passed on, which means wherever we were created from can give birth in water, because we can. Monkeys never have, never will. So therefore we can't have came from monkeys. It's the first thing. Now, this is when it comes down to the adimus or adimas. Adimas is plural when you read it. It's not singular. So Adam and Eve, no, it wasn't Adam. It was adimas. And there were 7 of them. So the 7 females were brought in, and then the eggs were taken out. And then they said, okay, now we need 7 genealogy of the stars. So the first one, Inky, and then, yep.
Can mate, I'm absolutely riveted when you tell me these First Nation, this culture, and I want to hear more about it. I'm wondering if we can bring it to where we're headed with the First Nations government, and and how this is going to help us with with the problems we've got currently?
No problem at all, because it all comes down to the same thing. When the simplest way, I'll bring it all the way down to make a short story. There were 7 genealogies from the stars. One from the one called Inky, his sister, who was a geneticist, she was a queen. So genealogy from the king and from his sister, a queen. And then 5 soldiers from the stars. Now you can look at all personalities on the planet. You have leaders, those who lead, those who are the leaders running around, they are the genealogy of the kings and queens of the stars. Those who are the followers, they are the ones who are of the genealogy of the soldiers. And you can see that all over the planet. Not everyone's born to be a follower or a leader. There's many groups, and then there's those who sit in the middle, the fence sitters. Now, it says in there, they put their own DNA in us. Now, you look at the shit that they're doing with these governments and so on, it's to keep your reptile brain, which is the right side of the brain, or the left side of the brain, which is the right part of the body, which is the what we call the animal side of it, to keep it activated. Because as soon as you shut that part down, then the God side, which is the other DNA that was put in us all. That's why the body, they say in the Bible, the body is the temple to God, because you've got 50% of God DNA in you, of those who actually created us, and their DNA is inside us. And all this shit we're going through for these thousands of years is to try and stop that DNA from being activated. Because as soon as you activate that part, then you start seeking yourself. Who are you? What are you? Because when you look at the true text and the true translation, and they talk about praise, praise does not mean praise. Praise means work for. And when you look at the stuff we're doing right now, it is about you creating your own destiny, which is what we're on right now. We were supposed to be given this destiny by these corporate governments, and we know it doesn't work. Now we're going back to the first law, which is the law of the crown. There's 4 crowns, just so you're aware. When you go to jail, you charge yourself, just so you're aware, because they know that the body is the temple to God, and the crown is the king or queen, which is the spirit inside the body, which is the temple. So every man and woman is a crown. And you look at when you go to bail, whose signature's on the bail document? Yours. You charged yourself. So you, the living man, are the one who charges the legal person, which is you with the dead ID. So you're charging yourself. That's basically what's going on without you knowing. The trick is you think they're charging you, but they're not. Because if you look at every document, only yours is the only signature on there. So you're the one actually, you, the living, are the one charging the dead corporation.
I've processed thousands of those documents.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what this does is, number one, we separate the two. It's called, when they put us together, they create a joinder. So you were born, they slapped your ass, made you cry, pricked the left foot, and put your blood on a card called a Guthrie card. That Guthrie card is your golem or your voodoo doll, where they actually put your living DNA. And then when you're registered at birth, that DNA is placed along with the name, the legal name. Now it's in joinder. To a living and a dead has been joined together. So with what we're doing, when you come into the tribal group, they actually separate the two. You, the living, get resurrected again because you're on the Wizard of Oz. You're the straw man, you're the cowardly lion, and you're also the tin man. The tin man is the one who works 9 to 5 nonstop like a machine, which you're living to work and working to live. That's the tin man, which is every 9 to 5 job today, is the tin man. The cowardly lion is all these people jumping up and fighting each other, but when it comes down to fighting the system, they're too coward. They'd rather fight each other than fight other groups. The cowardly lion. Then you got Dorothy. Who's Dorothy? Well, you're Dorothy. Dorothy is the one who's followed the yellow brick road, followed the money. Yeah. And who was the star of the show? Toto, a little dog. Yeah. And all he did was grab the blinds and pull the blinds aside and reveal this old man with bells and whistles who had all his power. Well, it's exactly the same right now. All this is called soft disclosure. So we're now finding that it was all a lie. It was all a trick. And that's the first law of the Vatican. He or she who can be tricked, let them be tricked. And while you walk around with a birth certificate, driver's license, so on, you have been tricked. And we know we must use them in the system at this moment, or they will arrest you, they will give you a fine, they will chuck you in jail. That's just the fact.
Yeah. And just to finish,
but under their laws,
finish that story with Dorothy, with the clicking of the 3 clicks of her heel is wanting to go home, which is a grant.
Can we talk about the elephant in the room?
And the benefit.
And for me, the elephant in the room is all these people that think there's a solution to our problems that don't involve the tribe. We've got no receipt of sale. We've got no treaty. And we've got the maximum of law, which is first in time, best in law.
And you got the Crown of Return Sovereign Documentation, which is US military text, which is what we've used, which clearly states, as soon as the returned sovereign crown returns, they can claim everything on their land. And I'll repeat, everything on their land. And I mean everything, everything, everything. That means every single house, every single building, every single bit of infrastructure they can claim, simply because no deal was done with the landlords by anybody, not just the governments, but the individuals as well. No deal was done. So everyone has received stolen lands. That's a fact. Now, what they did in South Africa, there was many white South Africans that assisted South Africa to come back to the tribes, and they were given all of their rights to keep all of their own assets. But those who didn't, all their assets were taken. They were told to piss off, and they had to leave. Well, the same thing's going on here right now. The only difference is we're not running around with axes and machetes. We're saying, okay, we know that white Australia's got a black history. But if we don't come together now in the process of creating this, then what may happen is very similar. So we want to prevent this same thing happening in Australia, which is why myself, Lance, and Kent work so hard together, and our team, is because we know that a lot of the tribes do not have the know-how how to run their own government, so therefore they need to learn. But there needs to be structures in place so that they can simply say, this is our desire, and then they give instructions to their team, which are the ministers within their ministries within the government, and the government simply follows through and does what is asked. Now, under the Crown of the Returned Sovereign, anything that cannot be returned to the tribe, they have the right to ask for double the value. Now, you look at Gold Coast, we're talking Uncle Dougie's land is halfway up to Brisbane. And how far down does it go, Lance? You the last down to
Yamba.
Yamba. So there's a lot of land there, a lot of national parks, a lot of state forests, and so on. Now, what we're doing in this process as well is we're setting up business etiquettes so that we bring the people and the tribal kingdoms and governments working together. What that means is joint ventures. Rather than people having to go and deal with this corporate government, do whatever business they do, pay whatever rents, pay land rates, water rates, and so on. We're looking at putting processes together so individual families, individual people can come in and deal directly with the tribe, sever their dealings with this corporate government, and step in, receive a new name, receive a new, within a new society, because under international law, the only society you can be charged by is the society you're part of. And that's why I said you can only serve one master. So while you're an Australian citizen, you're actually recognized as being from Norfolk Island. You've got a military name, so you're military from Norfolk Island. That makes you the enemy of the state. This is why the police are walking around with their tasers, their batons, and their guns, because you're known as the enemy of the state, which is also militia. And for those who don't know, militia is a citizen bearing arms. So that's what you're recognized as a citizen of Australia from Norfolk. So we want to cut this garbage out. And we're saying, well, you can have a bloody war, you can have a peaceful war. We're not into bloody. Do you see the rainbow? We're more into the peace. So we're the rainbow tribe because we are. Everyone came from us. We're the only group on the planet carry all 7 spectrums in human bloodline. Everyone else carries one, two, or a few of them, but we carry all 7, including African. We never came from Africa; they came from us. Yeah.
So now we've created or reasserted the Githabungarakbal Yukum Yukum Nation. Just share with us a few of those ministers, those ministries that are created beneath the sovereigns. I know that there's a Minister for Foreign Affairs.
That would be myself.
Yes.
And my job is basically, I'm dealing with this corporate government as foreign to Githabul because they never came from Githabul. So anyone outside Githabul is foreign to us. So my job is to treat them as foreigners and give them their new agreements or their walking orders, full stop.
I know that there's a minister. I know there's an attorney general.
Correct. He's an international lawyer at this moment, and we've got another guy doing it with law as well, Jason. And we've also got Lance. We put Lance into finance. He's the Minister for Finance. And he said, I don't like finance. I said, yeah, well, that's why you're the best person. Yeah, keep him honest. Yeah, you're not going to give someone who loves money the job. And he said, I hate the stuff. Perfect. Well, you're the perfect one, aren't you? So we asked him to become the finance minister. We got Kent. He's the police minister. And I must say, you give him a little bit of a background on your job, Ken, and what you've been doing up to this point, so they are aware of what you're doing outside this group as well, mate. Yeah,
sure, mate. Love to. I'm meeting with 3 chiefs of police soon. The 3 chiefs of police will handle detectives, general duties, and the 3rd one will handle emergency services and water police and enforcement on the water. We've selected a uniform. We will be following in the same footsteps as the Yidinji police. We will actually be Crown police officers in Crown law beneath the Royal House of beneath the Githabungarakbal Yukum Yukum Nation, and that places us as police senior to any other police inside of this country, except for the Yidinji, who we will work alongside with. But there's also a Minister for Education, Minister for Health, etc., etc. And the reason I'm mentioning these things is so that those people who listen will understand that this is a proper government. This is a legitimate government set up in the correct structure to deal with trade and commerce with the other countries of the world.
Correct. And I've got my business cards coming at the end of this week, so I'll be heading down to Canberra, taken into the embassies and all the consulates to introduce myself as the Foreign Affairs Minister for Githabungarakbal Yukum Yukum. And we've also got the 2nd highest man in the United Nations has already accepted us, recognized us for who we are, and informed us that we may get a bit of backlash from any of these corporate government, local, state, and federal. He's willing to open up a special court internationally for us to deal with these affairs, because we also know that some of these guys just don't want to play ball. And they think if they just treat us like we're fools and what we're doing isn't real, then we'll go away. When the fact is, we're just going to take them to an international court for war crimes, because what they did from 1973 to now is still a war crime. Because in order for it not to be, they must create a declaration of war for the war to be real. And they created an illegal war against the people, which is illegal under all nations on the planet, including The Hague and so on. And it clearly states in International Court of Justice, he or she, Nuremberg principles, he or she who commits a crime while following orders is guilty of the crime they commit. So every single person from local, state, and federal from 1973 to now is still up for a charge of the act of treason and continuing act of treason up to today. Everybody. And that means we can get Gough Whitlam dug up and stuck on a bench and charged. And that's they do that. They do that in Nuremberg. They'll actually dig up your corpse, bring your corpse in and charge you. Change history.
I'm hoping that's not a job that I get tasked with.
Oh, I was going to say, I've got your shovel here.
yeah, thanks. Hey,
and we got Lance here as well. we made him Minister for Finance. You want to give him a little bit of background on yourself and what you're doing with us, huh?
I'm having some technical difficulties because we're geographically very close. I'm in my office and Jag's in Anna's office, and so we're getting a bit of feedback. So I've got to be really careful with my mic and that. But the way we defeat the corporate government is commerce, and it's peaceful. They mightn't be happy with the outcome, but that's tough luck. That's war. Now, having said that, it's also the hardest door to open. And they've kept it that way for a reason. So we are literally working around the clock with people globally to break down the barriers so that the commerce can start. And every gain we have is a battle. So when you look at Githable and Narakbal, they are sitting on trillions and trillions of dollars worth of resource in the land alone, without the resource of the great people that also live in that new nation. So everything's a battle, but we're winning the battle, and they know we're coming, and they're not happy because they know that we're not going to go violent with them, that we're simply going to transfer all the wealth back to the tribe, back to the people of this country, right? And there's nothing they can do about it. They can slow it down, but they can't stop it. So look, like normal, the government is just a speed bump, okay? It's set there to slow you down. So we're just making our own roads, we're making our own inroads, and we're working our way around it right at the moment. We've put together an awesome team of people that are bringing this all together, and that's in the background, and they're very well protected, so nobody knows who they are, and they represent some really high-profile operators from right across Australia who are jumping in to power up the tribes. And I can tell you, these are guys that deal in the high end of finance, the high end of banking, and they're truly, truly excited about what they're seeing, because there's a lot of good people that didn't know how to get out of this system. And I've got to be quite honest, and when we started this, we never had a clue. And I've said this story before, but the more we worked, the more we found out. And if our intention is good, the true path is exposed to us. So literally, we are following the yellow brick road, and the yellow brick is a golden road, and it's you follow the money trail. And when you follow the money trail, you're going to find the evil people. But that doesn't mean that because we're going to control all the trade and commerce in Australia, that we're going to become evil people. Because if you put good, humble people in there who are not motivated by greed, wealth, ego, you can get good results. It's going to be about constant vigilance. And that's where the whole system of the tribal council, the ministers underneath, then you step it down to the people's councils. People's councils are going to be super, super important for governance at a very local level. No one knows your community like you guys do. No one. It's impossible. You're at the micro level. So it's up to you guys to manage yourself how you see fit. We'll put the systems in place to provide the, the upper level. And the tribe is obviously the ultimate arbitrator. I knew when we went on this journey that a lot of people would be nervous with this story, because we're talking about land that we don't own. But here's the great news, right? Everybody is custodians. The tribe represent the top custodians. So they're at the top. And I think we can all agree that they've been shit on ever since the white fella turned up, right? When you look at our history, it's poorly displayed. But when you travel around and you start to meet people and you work at a local level and you start to read some of the old history books from the churches, from the missions, and you get an idea. Oh, look, we want the Clarence Valley. It's prime agriculture. There's only one problem. There's 2,000 Githable Narakbal people living there. Well, we got a good idea. Let's round them up, put them on South Ballina Beach and kill them all in one event. That story is duplicated all across this land. Genocide. Now, it seems unbelievable until you look at what's happening now. We live in a time of genocide. And I've got to tell you something. The same families that were in charge when this country was colonized are the same families that are in charge now. We've never broken that cycle. And that's why we're in such a bad way. We've been governed by psychopaths and sociopaths, by bloodlines, since Cook turned up. That's why we can't understand what's happening. When you look through the chats and all the chat rooms, people are devastated that Dan Andrews got re-elected. I think it's funny. I think it's exactly what we deserve for thinking that we can fix an absolutely corrupt system by being honest, right? We can't fix that broken system. This is the whole plan. We've got a new way to step sideways. You get a license that's under the tribe. You get number plates that are under the tribe. You become a citizen in the tribal land. We entered fair commerce deals, fair systems of governance. This is where we go. And as Jagamara has told you, the tribe represents the highest law on this land, internationally recognized and locally recognized. So this is a fact in Cairns. Yidinji are recognized as the highest court, first in right, first in time, best in law. These are all facts. A couple of weeks ago now, they closed their borders for 3 hours just to prove who was in charge. Not to be stupid, not to be reckless, but just to let everyone know, hey, the Yidinji here, we have this power. We're recognized as having this power, right? So it wakes up the community. So I'm privileged to be part of this system. I love it. I could talk about it all day, but maybe there's some other people that want to ask questions of Jagger so that we can feel some confidence.
Any questions?
Any questions from the chat?
No, they're obviously, we were just talking about local councils and what in the chat, everyone's, got them revved up, giving us a 10 if they're really excited about this opportunity, and everyone's loving it and whatever. So I know some of us are working around the country to find out who our local original tribal members are so that we can start to work with them and do what you guys have done in the Githable Narakbal Yukum Yukum Nation. So obviously, there's a lot of processes to go through. So if people in other areas around Australia, Jagger, wanted to start to do this and instigate this, because it's going to take a lot of people to get this happening all around, where should they first start to look? And how should they start to communicate with the original
Genealogy.
Genealogy.
The main part is genealogy, because what we found with because in order to get us where we are now, we had to know where we came from. And we were dealing with 5 families who the genealogy of Githable, of the main, the trunk of the tree, which is called Williams. And there's only one Williams family in the area. And so this corporate government did a search to all through the Pacifics to find other families called Williams. And they brought them in with no passports, and they gave them all land and gave them the genealogy of Dougie Williams' family. And all they had to do was sign off saying, yep, I'm a Williams, I'm from here, and sign off. And that's how all of the illegal developments happened through the Gold Coast, from one side of the border to another. All Tweed Heads, it's all illegal development. Casuarina, illegal development. The new hospital, all illegal development. And that was from the ALP decided 1901, when the other queen died before this last one, all land was supposed to be given back to the tribes again. But then when they worked on that, they said that saw that all of the development was 97% of the development, all of Australia is along the shorelines. And if they gave it all back, then the tribes would be the biggest landowners in Australia. So they didn't want that. So they started creating corporate tribes. Bunjalung is the very first corporate tribe that was created. And then from there, they moved the genealogy across to these families called Williams, but they're islanders, not from here. And so on paper, in the legislation, it's where it's all hidden. So it's land laundering and apartheid. Apartheid is when you bring another group of blacks from one area to come in and claim land of another set of blacks. And they do that, it's called black against black, so that you can't get the Aboriginal legal service to defend you because you're up against another black fella. And that's how they stop you from defending yourself, because now no legal service will go up and against another black fella. So you've got to go into normal legal aid, which is another fast. They're all in bed together. So Bob Carr and Bob Davis, when Bob Carr was the Premier of New South Wales, he was the one who set the pattern up, along with Native Title Services. Now, for those who don't know, Native means you neglect your dead, neglect your newborn, therefore cannot be seen as a civilized human being, but as an animal, flora and fauna, is a native. So native title is less than animal title. A beekeeper has more rights than a native title owner.
Right. Now, you guys, your team about 13, 14 years ago put together your case and proved the Williams family case in the Supreme Court and in the High Court of Australia. And that judgment has already been passed. And the amount of evidence that your team put together proved full customary title to this land, which means it's
Absolutely.
your land. Now,
correct.
So that's been done.
2007 that happened.
2007. Now,
Correct.
and the court case, I've seen it. It's a fantastic win, an absolutely super powerful win. Now, I know there are other cases of similar power across Australia. In your estimation, how much land that's owned by Aboriginal people are ready to join with us as soon as we can roll this out professionally and with the proper structure? To your just to your knowledge, how many are ready to go
right
so
now,
far?
I've got Warlpiri, which is the biggest tribal area in Australia. That's 295 kilometers northwest of Alice Springs. That's Warlpiri. Then you got Arunda, which is Alice Springs mob. And then from Nolpita which is Ayers Rock mob. Yeah, Pintabee mob, Longgrass. They're between Yuwindamu and Ayers Rock area. Yuwindamu, was it Pintabee, Luricha, altogether now, I believe we've got 14 tribes from Central Desert, Western and South Australia, all ready to jump on right now. The only thing we're waiting on now is some finances so we can go out there or bring them here to do the paperwork, because we've now turned the paperwork into templates so it can be duplicated throughout all of Australia for any tribe. That's already done. Through the amazing work of these two men here and their amazing wives, a lot of that stuff's already been templated already. So now it's the finances so that we can either bring them down to learn this technology or to get us out there to deal with them. We've also got South Coast. I've introduced Lance and Kent to the senior man for the South Coast area. They've met him already. He sung magic songs for them when they first met. He's amazing song man, and he's a lawman as well. We've also got top end mobs. David Cole, Mark McMurtry have been moved to the side. David Cole was assaulted, bashed in Central Desert, payback by traditional mobs out there, shooting his mouth off, calling himself a red band in front of everyone. He got payback in the desert. That's why he's not on, you don't see him on Facebook no more. He's hiding his face from, they knocked him out 3 times, woke him up, and knock him out again. 3 times they did that to teach him a lesson.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty full on. They don't muck around out there, hey. And
Jagger,
so
what have you got in the West, Jagger? Have you forgotten about us Westies over here?
in the West, I've actually got 4 groups in West I'm dealing with right now.
Is one of them the
And
Bibleman?
also the Kimberleys as well.
Is one of them the Bibleman, Jagger?
The
Bibleman tribe?
Bibleman. Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of. I've got a list of tribes out Western Australia that I'm dealing with right now. But I'm asking them to get me the genealogy now, because I'm saying to everyone, without seeing the genealogy of the people who are the bloodline, where you can see what they call the king's plates and queen's plates, because this is what we found, that when the stolen generation, it was not just to steal children. It was because they created a breeding program around the planet. So because in 1839, they created the breeding program around the planet, whereby the Rothschilds and Rockefellers wanted to get their next offspring to be the genealogy of all of the land on the planet. And so they created a breeding program, and they found the matriarchs and patriarchs of all tribes, then they bred in with them. And then they stole their children, which were the next of kin, because they were the genealogy next of kin, the new landlord. Yeah. And then they took them away and put them in new education and banking and finance and in governance structure and kingdoms. And then they, in order to prove that they had the genealogy, they then gave our people kings and queens plates, King Billy, Queen Josephine, and so on, which are like a crescent moon. And it had their name, but recognized the king. They were taking photos of them so that they could actually take that evidence back to England and to the Vatican, showing that their next of kin that they have been training in this new system was being trained for the new world of banking that they were setting up from 1839 onwards. And then when they did the Port Nicholson deed of purchase, which was done in 1839 in New Zealand, whereby they illegally purchased, bought into the sovereignty of the tribes of the planet, because we were all hunters and gatherers. We did not do trade for gold, silver, or anything. So we were infants to the system of banking. And this is where they said, okay, we will put all of our rights as the landlords, the genealogy of the planet, and their own rights as the trustees under a trust to administer as an infant. Welcome to the infant of the state, which is a legal person. That was created in 1835 for everybody. 1835, and it comes out of New Zealand. So the infant of the state, your legal person, is actually created from New Zealand, 1839. And that's where they captured all continents under that Port Nicholson deed of purchase to administer over the lands and over the banking until we came out of our infant state, out of our state of infancy, which means we had to understand the laws and rules of the new world, because none of these monarchs wanted to come in and do business with us if our laws are payback and we're throwing spears and boomerangs and splitting each other's heads open with stone axes. They wanted a law that they could deal with it, that we would accept when dealing in an international world of commerce. And so the law of the Vatican, all governments can rule over the tribes and all lands until they get their house in order. Meaning we have to step up out of this stage of wanting to physically hurt each other and others if they break the laws that we are accustomed to, and come into a new world to be able to do banking internationally, because no court on the planet will accept a law whereby we bring African, Japanese, Chinese into our tribal law. They break the law and get a spear. No court will allow it. Customary law, we can do that with our own if that's what our own want to do and wish to deal with it, but we cannot do that with anyone outside our own tribal groups, which is 1666, the papal, 1666, where they copyrighted the Holy See of Space and created the Holy See of paper law.
You know, so, Jagger, as a copper, I used to hear about this. I would hear about this customary law, and I would just go, because I was young, I would say, this can't be real. Like I was a police officer enforcing the law. I'd say, this can't be real. And what you're telling me, mate, most people don't understand, but it was real, and it still is today.
It still is real.
It's real, and the judges allow this to happen. It's not that they allow it to happen, it's that they've got no authority over the First Nation people.
Correct.
And people, like, I never understood that. I came from this other system of law, and I'm just so happy that we are where we're at. We're out of time. I'm going to let Ainsley take that over, but we've got so much more to talk about, and I want to go on a journey with you over the coming weeks, so that we can bring everybody up to speed and help everyone create the necessary TAP groups, let them understand the highly important relationship between you guys and TAP and where we're headed, how this is happening for no money. We're not out to take money out of people's bank accounts or anything like that, how we want to keep their land titles safe, et cetera, and how we want to introduce a true system of fair and lawful governance back into this nation.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Lance, do you have any last words for Jagger before we wrap up the session for tonight?
Yeah, thanks, Ainsley. I'm still having problems with everything, but let me say, Australia is unique in all the world with this opportunity. We've got the chance to peacefully move into a new system, a completely new jurisdiction that offers safety to everybody except for the scumbags that are trying to kill us and the scumbags that are performing the evil. We've got the mechanisms to investigate and to prosecute and to punish those scumbags, but we do it all peacefully. And I can't emphasize the point enough. We are unique because the tribes are still intact, because the tribes never sold their land, because the tribes never treated, because we're dealing with the oldest culture and tribes on the planet, recognized by everybody. It's a wonderful opportunity. We need to engage in these projects. We need to take full advantage of this, because as soon as this is up and running and the people come to the party, we're out of the old system. We're completely out of it. We don't even have to vote to get out of it. We just vote with our feet, right? We vote with our head. We leave. We just simply leave, and we walk into a new reality that we've created. And then we work together as a nation, or as many nations, the United Kingdoms of Australia, or Terra Australis, or whatever we decide. And we set up a new system that everyone's happy with. And based on solid principles of law and respect and love and to be courteous. We don't have that now. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity. I'm going to encourage everybody absolutely get engaged in this. This is the biggest game in town. Right? Don't listen to anybody who's talking about Q. Okay, I can tell you Q's not tribal. Q has no power on this land. We do. And we take advantage of it and we move on. All right, thanks, guys.
Giving the power back to the people. So Jagger, thank you so much. For an absolute pleasure listening to you. I'm sure we could all listen to you for hours and hours and hours, but we are out of time this week. We'll have to bring you back again, brother, and learn some more. Guys, thank you for everyone who's been listening tonight. I know this is a lot to wrap your head around, and it will take some time, but please continue. Join your TAP satellite groups, get involved, and you'll see more and more of these nations rolling out around the country with Jagger, Lance, Kent, and the help of the teams behind them and making this happen. So as always, it's a pleasure. Thank you for joining us, Kent, Lance, and Jagger, and thanks to everyone. And we'll see you next time on Triple Tap. Bye for now.
Blessings. Bye for now.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.